Welcome to the Dragonlance Saga Hangout. It is Lenar's Youth Krynn the 23rd. My name is Adam, and today I'm being joined by the artist, illustrator, all-around good dude, Mike Berry. How you doing, man?
Hey, all. I'm doing great. Thanks. Thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
Always. And like the last time I had you on, we sort of did a full-blown interview on you and showcased your work and stuff, which I want to do some more of. But we were sort of walking through Fieldthas, the Dragon High Lord, and options that you had come up for various looks, and we were just sort of creatively concepting ideas and stuff. And you actually finished that piece, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I sure
So
did. And I sent you the pictures. So
yeah, I believe we have it queued up here. So let's just sort of walk through some of this stuff as we just chat and discuss. Quick in the chat room, Chris, great to see you. Goldmoon, how are you, dear? And Jason, thanks for tuning in. Anyone else after the fact you want to jump in and say hi? Feel free. The water's warm. Get in here. Grab a drink. All right, it's the weekend, so it's a Sunday. It's the lazy day, so let's just sort of have some fun. So here's
sure, I love it.
Fieldthas that you came up with. Look at this.
Yeah. I mean, we had talked about him during the our last conversation, and I incorporated some of those ideas. And I just had a blast working on this lesser-known Dragon High Lord. And what you're looking at is the final concept that I came up with.
It looks great. I love the sword too. No, it hangs off him.
Yeah, I was trying to go for something a little different. He's riding a dragon, so he wouldn't have it up high on him. Was looking at cavalry references.
Oh, nice.
And a lot of it's hard to tell, but there's a bit of a texture on his scabbard for his sword, right? So I was kind of referring off of Arabian style swords, trying to think more Sylvanas the elves, it's an older culture. They have time. They're elves. They live for hundreds of years, right? So they're going to take the time to put decoration into every aspect of their equipment. So, I imagine he would still, even though he's an evil dragon high lord, he would still have a lot of those aesthetics. Like, I don't want a boring leather scabbard. I want one, gilt and silver, perfect for me, right?
Yeah. No, it looks great. I love the helmet. It's got those like tusk horns coming out of it.
Yeah, well, I was trying to go with, if you look at the design for Sleet, his dragon, and every time they draw a white dragon in the old 80s Dragonlance, it had 5 horns, and they're sort of this yellow with a blue tip. So I was trying to incorporate that same sort of motif throughout. So we have a similar, you can tell he's a white dragon high lord.
Yeah. I
mean, doing him all in white, it's not as dramatic, doesn't it? It didn't really, it looked weird, right? So I incorporate a lot more black and white, that way. And he's also a black mage, so we have to have some of that going on too.
Well, I like how you treated the robes. It reminds me of like old samurai outfits where there's like multiple fabric layers all sort of put together. It's very, very cool looking. I dig that.
Well, it's a cold place, and he's still evil wizard, so he's got to have his armor. He's a fighter mage. And if you look at historical armor too, there's lots of layers to it. It's not just a chainmail. There's usually a padded gambeson and that kind of thing. So I like that idea. He's got some padding, like a gambeson type material underneath his dragon scale armor, and then he's got his black robes on top of that, and then he's got his cape. I didn't give him the long kind of 80s cape. I gave him more of a short cape just to make him look a little different. And the robes started to get overwhelming if you throw big capes and everything else. But, he's got the tassels, he's got the fur, he's got some other elements I put in there. And there's some elements even in his helmet that I borrowed from Conan the Barbarian. Oh. If you remember Thulsa Doom's, the character Thulsa Doom played by James Earl Jones.
Yeah.
They have this kind of, I don't know if you can see the decorations of the runes and stuff on the side of his face on the helmet, like a leather kind of thing. I borrowed some of those themes from the costumes of that movie. Just cool. That 80s sci-fi fantasy vibe. I was really trying to keep it going.
It's the best.
Because Dragonlance is 80s fantasy to me. It still is, and I love it. And I want to embrace it and bring that out, modern fantasy sometimes, it just doesn't speak to me like the old stuff does. So I want to, new technology and art, but older style motif, right?
Absolutely. Very, very cool. And here we get to see those details of variations. Ooh, I like the face mask part, the metal. That's cool.
Yeah, well, quite often in the story, they describe, the dragon high lords watching things through the slits in their eyes, and
Yeah.
I'm reading Test of the Twins right now with
Ooh,
my
nice.
daughter,
That's a good
and
one.
it describes Katara, her eyes narrowing in the slits of her dragon helm. So yeah, I thought I'd throw that in there, but I didn't want to go with the designs that had already been done, like Verminard and Katara. So I thought maybe more of a face plate, something to, you still hide his face, but you can still see more of his eyes.
Cool. It
Hmm.
looks great, man.
Yeah, it's a
See,
lot of fun.
everyone loves Flint. Flint's great.
I just finished reading Dragons of Dwarven Depths,
Oh
and
yeah.
I hadn't read that before, and it was fun. It was different.
Mhm.
And one thing that occurs to me, they describe Flint as this, all white hair, really, really old. And if you read the old module in the little notes, his age, the equivalent would be 54 years old, and that's not like grandpa old. He can't adventure old. It's just near the end of his adventuring, and they kind of always describe him as this like long white beard, and I'm like, no, Flint, he's old, but he can still swing an axe and do his thing, right? So that's why I
Yeah.
gave him a little salt and pepper going on. He's still a threat.
Yeah. We've both got a little bit of that salt and
Mhm.
pepper going on. Hopefully, we don't go down the path of Flint. The heart attack.
Yeah,
That
this is
sucked.
true. So, and this guy, I was trying to incorporate some of his. Oh, we lost it, but
It's okay. I'm back.
just in the old Larry Elmore, it's described as him with studded leather armor, but he has sort of a Roman skirt going on, and I kind of ditched that and went for just a leather, I don't know what the vest type garment with some studs in it, but I still kept that X sort of harness that he wore with that. He has that chest plate piece of armor. I don't know what roundel. I don't know if that's the term for it, but yeah, I try to keep some of the old design but update it.
It
So
kind of
we have.
reminds me of how they presented Duggan Redhammer, who's the sort of the avatar of Reorx the god. Whenever
Okay.
he's shown, he has those big old fluffy pants. He's like this
Hmm.
luxurious
Hmm.
dressed dwarf, and
Hmm.
like that's kind of what the vibe I'm getting off of it. Almost like a pirate vest or something that you've got
Hmm.
here, which is kind of cool.
Well,
Interesting.
have you read the Art of the Dragonlance book? Of course you
Yeah.
have. Must have.
Yeah.
In there, they at the beginning of it, it shows some of the earliest concepts of the characters, and there's some watercolor illustrations by Larry Elmore,
Oh, those
and
are
one
great.
of them, I think that is the source for that description of Dugan Redhammer. It's the guy. It's like a dwarf with a big hat with a feather or
Yeah.
plumes coming out of it, and I'm that must be the source.
Like almost Three Musketeers like.
Yes, that must be the source for Reorx, and that's what I
100%.
enjoyed about Dragons of Dwarven Depths is that Reorx there's more of him in it, so we
Mhm.
see him interacting with Flint, and you get more of a sense of what a dwarf god would be like, which is cool because it's mostly Paladine and Takissus in the books
Yeah.
and Mishakal a little bit, but it's mostly that. So to see all the other gods and their take on things, and it gave me more insight into dwarven culture, which was pretty neat. It was nice. It was a nice sort of thing to add to it.
That's the part I really liked about it. Is it gave it like with Middle Earth, you have Khazad-dûm, which
Hmm.
the mines of Moria and everything. There's like massive underground dwarven kingdom, and we have that with Dragonlance and Thorbarden and a couple other ones as well. But
Hmm.
like with Thorbarden, it's like it's like this metropolis
Hmm.
underground, and no one
Hmm.
really ever talked about it in any version of depth until we got that Dwarven Depths novel. And then you
Hmm.
really get the sense of how these different dwarven clans exist in this underground kingdom that is
Hmm.
so much more vast than the modules ever presented. It's
Hmm.
very, very cool. I love it so much.
I always thought of it as a one big city,
Yeah.
not several cities
Yeah.
under the mountain. And that's what kind of blew me away when I'm reading it. And also in the modules, there's hints they describe that there's other dwarven realms up in the north somewhere.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder if they're related, if they're good dwarves up there, bad dwarves. Like that's a whole other realm that we could start talking about or exploring.
Oh, dude, it's so great. I believe Kalen was annexed from the Salamnians for dwarves. It's for their own little kingdom up there, and that's in Salamnia, southern Salamnia, right above Abyssinia. And then
Hmm.
over in like south of the Taman-Busik is Zikar, which is right next
Hmm.
to Kerr, and those are like the evil dwarves over there, and they've got their own like huge kingdom. But there's a lot of Kaldthaxes, which is like it's called Cold Forge. But when the dwarves migrated south upon creation, they were originally gnomes.
Hmm.
Um, and depending on which version of the history you want to adhere to, because it varies throughout the years of Dragonlance. But they just created new kingdoms all the way south from Anslon down to Thorbard and then back up. And then they went and tried to find their original old kingdom. And it's really, really in depth. There's a whole box set called Dwarven Kingdoms of Krynn, which goes into incredible detail about dwarves. It's very, very cool.
One more thing for me to look up.
Yeah, it's seemingly endless, but there is an end to, to all the source material.
I'm not I'm not
cool.
convinced.
Raggart King or Raggart
Yeah.
Nug.
Yeah, I think I showed you some of these as just the drawings the last time, but I went ahead and finished these characters. And instead of him having a Frost Reaver, I figured he made himself a Frost Mace.
Oh, nice.
Why not? If he can, he still has to fight. He's a cleric. Why not make himself a tool using the same materials?
Yeah.
And because they describe him a little bit, it depends. There's varying degrees of how they describe him, either as like an old man covered in furs or as a competent tracker, or But he's an important member of the community, and you would think he would. I mean, in such a violent, dangerous community, you think he would have some kind of weapons to defend himself. So
yeah, for sure.
But I didn't depict them as Inuit, covered in furs and that. I depict them more as kind of Viking-ish, that sort of that vibe.
That's cool. I dig it. I never really thought about the Earth version ethnicity that would connect with them before until you just mentioned Inuit, and then I'm like, well, wait a second, would they? I don't know.
Well, I think of them as people left over from the Cataclysm. So only 300 years, and Tarsus was a huge trading center with a vast amount of population. And I don't know if the Earth, like our reality analog, really works, they would be like, same with the Plainsmen, like Gold Moon and Riverwind. I don't imagine them as First Nations peoples. I imagine them as what's left of the citizens of Zaxxaroth that have kind of, their culture has sort of
interesting.
Yeah, I don't see them as they've always been plains people chasing buffalo. I think of them more as like a civilization, that has lost so much of their technology and their culture, because everyone lost after the Cataclysm, and then they rebuilt. And I don't see them as like, they have villages and permanent settlements. So they're the analogy to. So I grew up in the plains of North America here, and the First Nations people here, they traveled constantly to follow the food sources. So it doesn't make sense. Like, to me, in my brain, it doesn't make sense that what they're describing doesn't match with the reality that I know. And I think it's more interesting about, cultures that have failed and rebuilt and came into something new, and it adds more layers of depth to them. Yeah. Because I don't know. I can talk all day about this type of stuff.
That's my bag, man. I love ancient human culture and development. And like, once one people's died out, another people's migrated, found their structures, and just took them over.
I love it.
I mean, you build on top of them, and it explains why we have such vastly different construction methods at individual sites in South America, all over South America and the Middle East and stuff, where the technology, it seems, was infinitely better originally. And then when people came later after some sort of global catastrophe to build on those existing structures, you then see that they're not as good as they were. And because just like the Plains people, they were trying to recover after 300 years of darkness, I love that view of the Plains people that you project, because they did have mud structures. Like, they had solid buildings and stuff. And that's something that you don't see a lot of indigenous peoples doing, if they were really like the Plains tribal type people.
Exactly. Interesting. Riverwind fights with a sword and, metalworking, that kind of thing. It's like, you need to have a permanent settlement if you're going to have a blacksmith to make something like that, unless they trade. Like, there's just a lot of stuff, I'm probably overthinking it, but, this is my version. So this is how I imagine it.
Yeah.
So this is Lorana.
Yeah, this is new.
Yeah, I wanted to do. Every time we see Lorana, it's always her in her hero outfit, her armor. Yeah, and we never get to see her she doesn't get that armor until the end of the second book, and for the most of it, she's described as just wearing chainmail. And in the book, they say when she goes to Sanchrist that she's wearing leather armor, and I decided to, she's similar. She's an elven princess who ran away from home, but she still has her sword and her armor. Like she has basic equipment, and she's a fighter. She's a competent fighter too. So I wanted to depict her as the elven princess runaway, not the the golden general. And that's something we never get to see. And I like the idea of costume changes throughout. Like it's an adventure that spans a year. They're going to change their shoes every once in a while.
And that's the other thing. I mean, the sort of the comic aspect of how these characters are presented. It is very much, well, this is their outfit. Always show them in that outfit. It's going to get stinky really quick.
Yeah,
like after a week, you're going to want to change your breeches.
Or it gets, they're in fights and they take a sword hit from a draconian and it's going to cut your clothes. So you're going to have to mend it or get something new to replace it. I like that. I like that lived in, and it just adds more depth to the story. And that's something Dragonlance doesn't really have or hasn't had a lot of, is that, like, I'm coming at it more from a cinematography kind of point of view, but I like adding those layers to it. And
I think it's great.
So here's just some of the characters. These are the NPCs from Dragons of Ice, and then my version of a Thanoi.
Nice. Scary walrus people.
Yeah. It's weird how they describe them in, they swim, they live in the water, yet they don't need tools, but they can carry tools. And I'm trying to think of how walrus guys would, swim with an axe strapped to them, right? Like they're scary and powerful enough just as is. They don't need weapons and tools. So, and this is the lineup of all the heroes, as I see it, so just sort of for scale, how they all kind of look next to each other. And
that's great. That's very cool, man. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Sturm. That took a lot of time.
I bet. Look at the detail in that armor.
Oh, I spent forever agonizing over this guy, and I finally feel like I got it. He's the first one I started with, and I hit a roadblock with his armor, and I just had to stop and move on to someone else. And I'm glad, because then I came back to it with better perspective on how things are. But I've made a couple changes. I made his sword a great sword, not a two-handed longsword. It's weird because they describe that in the books he's got a sword and shield, right? But in the modules and the games, even, he's got a two-handed sword. He doesn't have a shield and a big honking two-handed sword. And I wanted to go back to that. I kind of wanted to make the bright blade a little more outstanding. Like it's a powerful weapon. It's a two-handed sword +3. And I don't know if you sword fight or if you fence or anything, but I've actually been studying German longsword. So now I'm a bit of a sword nerd. And to me, the difference between a longsword and a two-handed sword is a big deal. And I wanted to show him with a two-handed sword. And I think it makes him stand out more. He looks less of a generic knight and more like, the hero he is.
That's cool. Yeah. In later editions, they qualified it as a hand and a half sword. So like a bastard sword, where the handle, it was a very long blade, but could be wielded one-handed, but you also could do it two-handed as well. I actually like the look of two-handed swords personally better for warriors. I just think it's kind of, it gives you, first of all, it gives you distance away from your enemy, which is really important. But you just, more powerful swings, and it's just kind of,
it makes him a tank. It really makes him a tank. And for the heroes, if you look at the party, Carmen is kind of described as the tank, but he's not really. Like, if you look at his stats, like, he hits hard, but he doesn't have big, powerful weapons and a lot of armor. Sturm, plate mail, two-handed sword. I mean, he's the tank of the team. So I wanted to show him that way. Like, you're not going to get by this guy easily or get close to him easily.
Yeah. Whoa! I never thought we'd see Sturm nipples. You're welcome, internet.
There you go. Well, I mean, when you're concepting guys, you want to show them what do they look like in the various stages of their costume, right? And I was playing with the idea of him starting off the adventure as a squire. So by the end of, when he becomes a full knight, that's when he gets his full suit, right? And that, that was sort of what you can see with the first three images. That's, in his undergarments, his basic clothing, and then, some pieces of armor, his sword and his helmet, and, stuff that he got that was left over from his dad. But, later when he becomes a knight, I was thinking, if you go, I guess it'd be the fifth image on the right, that would be him getting the rest of his stuff. And then he's appointed the leader of the Knights of the Crown, for the Battle of the High Claris Tower. So he looks more. I think if this was ever to be shot as a movie, that would be a more obvious cue to the viewers that there's been a progression for Sturm as a character and his status as a knight. I thought it'd be a very obvious visual, but seeing him in his plate armor throughout the adventure also, I mean, it makes him stand out a lot from the rest of the team. So
yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, thanks for tuning in, S Wild. Good to see you, Derek. What is up? Yeah, give him a kilt, and he's a Scottish warlord. That's right. Well, I mean, talking about cinematics, we're already almost halfway into this conversation. We had talked about maybe storyboarding a scene.
Yeah.
You want to dive into that?
Yeah, sure. I'll just share my screen here, and then
Whoa,
we will.
Infinity.
Whoa, what happened there? Am I sharing? Okay. Now can you see this?
There, let's go back to it. I just wanted to stop Infinity. Yep, I got you.
Okay. All right. Sorry about the Infinity time warp, guys.
Let's do time warp again.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, so I'm going to, we're just going to, draw whatever. Oh.
So you and I had spoken, whoa, all right. We had spoken before about possible scenes that we wanted to sort of look through. And one of them I thought was really interesting that was brought up was Baccharis when he delivers Derek Crownguard and another fallen knight's body to the High Claris Tower to deliver terms to, well, ostensibly Sturm and Lorana and Flint as they're sort of looking over in the night of this, sort of snowy evening moment. And it's a moment that is, I think, can be really, really cinematic because not only is Baccharis relying on the Knights of Salamnia to keep their honor so that they don't strike him down dead while he's delivering and mocking them, delivering these bodies and mocking the Knights of Salamnia while he's doing it. He certainly doesn't expect Lorana to hit him with an arrow in the arm, basically making it so he could never wield a sword with that arm again. And it was just such a brilliant scene because, I mean, if you think about this, they're up high in the High Claris Tower on this wall, right? Looking down. It's incredibly dark. It's nighttime. It's snowy. And so you have that sort of, whenever it's actively snowing, it's infinitely quieter because, sound does not reflect off of anything. And it just sort of like is tamped down a little bit. So you got this really great evening shot. The only light you're going to have is off of the single torch that Baccharis is using in this stark darkness. And so it's going to be illuminating falling snow, and it's going to have this nice soft glow all about it. So he's walking up, riding up, you're hearing the horse breathing and the horse hooves crunching in the snow.
So how do we describe this visually? Because you're describing, so how do you see it in your mind's eye frame-wise? So is it black and all, so imagine this whole screen's black, right? And maybe we're just seeing in the distance this light and it's slowly moving towards the camera. And then as it gets closer, we're starting to see Baccharis, he's holding his torch, right? And he's on the back of a horse coming towards us. Is that what you're describing?
Yeah. So, and I would even think it's from up above, from the wall of the High Claris Tower looking down. So it's almost pure blackness with that tiny little glint of light in the far below distance. And as it's getting closer, that light is added to the existing torches on the outside wall of the High Claris Tower. And so he's slowly moving in. You're just getting that crunch and the clang of all the armor of his horse. And the bodies are draped across the saddle, probably behind him, across the horse's back. And he's, it's just this night shot, slow and quiet. And the only sound is ambient sound. No one's talking or anything because no one knows what it is. And then they call out to him, like sort of that who goes there moment.
So what am I doing here? Something like this, so is this would be the tower wall? Yeah. So we're just seeing a hint of the parapet maybe. Would we see someone's head maybe? Or how?
I don't see why not. Probably Sturm because he's the one sort of on, commanding on watch.
Okay. So we're seeing
over his shoulder.
So we're seeing Sturm's shoulder here. Everybody, this is just rough, right? These are just
Yeah.
roughs.
We're just concept here. We're having fun.
So we're seeing this, just over his shoulder. What's going on? Maybe there's like he's holding. Would he hold his own torch, or would he be holding his spear, or a
I would
flag?
imagine the walls would have torches in them, but
Right.
as far as like cinematically, it might be interesting for him almost leaning the torch out as if it could help him see who it is coming up.
Well, that might almost be interesting for a frame where, a cut, right? So maybe we see up here, we're looking up now at the tower,
Yeah.
right? Up
Well,
the
we
walls.
have to have those dynamic shots, separating the two. So he first sees them. Sturm on the wall is seeing that light torch come down. Then we shoot down on Baccarus's view. I would not even have it on him. It's just on the ground itself looking up, and then he enters the frame and walks past the frame, the camera. So we see his horse moving from the ground, looking up. That extreme.
Okay, so we're just seeing the horses from. Okay, you lost me.
It's okay. So let's say the camera is 100 feet away from the wall, looking up at it, kind of like what you have right here. And then the camera's position is just on the ground. And so Baccarus on horse is walking past, maybe to the left or the right of that camera toward the wall.
Okay, so cameras say here,
Yeah.
and we're seeing just like a worm's eye view of Baccarus.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
So he's kind of walking this way, and he's got, maybe there's a horse head just coming into frame.
Yeah, I like that.
Like that. So
Guiding
we just
the
see
horse
this,
toward it.
he's got his big dragon, his horns, and he's walking, he's pulling this. Here's the reins here. We're not quite seeing what's going on. Would he even be carrying a sword or any kind of weapon in this hand, or his own torch, right? He'd have his own torch.
Yeah, he has his own torch.
Okay, so we got this torch here, and that's sort of this casting light. And so he comes pretty close to the tower, and we see, all kinds of people.
Laurent is up there. He probably can't make out who it is he's talking to, but he knows it's probably the commander.
So there'd be light, maybe some torn flags, banners flying in the wind, that kind of thing. So this would be parapet kind of going that. So the frame's going that way. Is there a gatehouse at this point in this?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge gate. There's a number of gates into the High Claris Tower, actually.
Yeah, would he be coming towards a gate? Like, would that be the place he would go?
Yeah, because I mean, he's expecting to hand off the corpses. So
right. Okay, so there'd be a gate here, so we have some framing. He's coming in that way. Yeah. That the camera's down here, so it's a little more dramatic. We see the approach, and maybe he would come in. So here's frame one, right, or part of it, and then we'll do another one where he's even closer. He's moved in. Yeah. And then
I like him moving right past the camera, so he's now in front, looking up, because he doesn't enter the High Claris Tower at all. It's really just he stops in front of it, and he just starts basically delivering the corpses and mocking the Knights of Salamnia at the same time.
So if we do this, now we can kind of see the bodies.
Yeah, one of them's headless.
Yeah, there's Derek, who's in the foreground. Maybe this one's Derek and this one's headless, right? We can see. I mean, that's pretty gruesome to see a headless corpse, but this is a pretty violent. It's war. These things happen, right? Would he have anything? It makes me wonder. Would these horses, are these the knight's horses? Would this be Derek's horse he's bringing it in on?
No, I imagine it's just his, because he needs to ride it back. He doesn't want to walk all the way back.
Okay.
To his camp.
Well, I thought he came in with two horses, one for each corpse.
I'm not sure.
I
mean,
well,
I have
that's
the
just
notes here. It doesn't really matter at this point, but for cinematics.
Right. So we've just got this real strong.
But he just throws them on the ground, the corpses. He delivers them, and they're calling. He's looking. Well, I'll just read it right here. I've brought back your officers. One is quite dead, as you can see. The other, I believe, still lives, or he died, or he did when I started my journey. I hope he's still living, so that you can recount for you what took place on the field of battle today, if you could even call it a battle. So yeah, he's just talking, mocking. He's like, yes, you could kill me now. I'm a fine target, even in this fog, but you won't. You're Knights of Salamnia, and your honor is your life. You won't shoot an unarmed man, return the bodies of your leaders. And then you're just... So I like the idea of, we see him from far away approaching the tower. We see him down from below, going past the camera to the tower. And then he stops right where he is right there, calls up to them saying that. It would be nice if we could get like just, like a 12-foot high in front of him view of him looking up into the camera's eye. With the bodies behind him and stuff on the horses, just talking to them. Yeah.
So kind of something like this. He's got his torch in one hand with the light, and then he's looking up at the knights, gesturing. I brought your corpses. Standing defiantly, and because he's the villain, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's in charge of the Blue Dragon Army at this moment, so it's he's been given
So
that authority by Kitiara.
we want to see him. We want to see a lot of him here. So maybe we won't see too much of the bodies yet. Maybe that would be another cut.
Yeah, I like that.
So, or we can see, one guy's head here, a horse, the back of the horse here. There's definitely the horses. They're in the background here. So he's brought them. We can see them, but we're not quite. The reveal isn't here yet, right? The reveal's got to shock us. The reveal's got to be like, oh, like it's dark. These horses are too big, but.
Yeah, I question how to reveal this, because you have to show the bodies. One of them's supposed to be alive still in order to relay the horror that it went through trying to go against the dragon army. The other one is beheaded, clearly dead. You're going to have, the blood's going to be frozen and crystallized. Maybe it's been a while since the battle, so it wouldn't be actively dripping or anything. So yeah, when he approaches and he just says, hey, I've got these bodies here for you. One of them was alive when I left. Then you get that shot, that close-up, gruesome shot of the bodies.
Okay. So here we could see.
I mean, I'm a horror fan, and so I love the gore aspect of it.
How do you see this frame then? How do you imagine this? Like, so where is the camera going to be? Is it going to be right in there, like you're standing between the two horses?
Maybe the camera moves in past him, like he talks and says he has the corpses, and then the camera moves past him and just zooms in on the bodies themselves. Maybe even it pans down a little bit to get like eye level, and it just shows the bodies draped over.
Okay, so maybe he's here, right? And now the camera's right in here, and here's so these boxes sort of indicate like where the horse is, right? And we got one really close. So we can see, close up. Maybe we can see, this would be the headless corpse here. Yeah. Right. So
there's got to be like the armor has been cut to hell. Maybe it's even hanging off, like an epaulet's like just flopped over, hanging on by a piece of leather strap or something.
Okay.
There's a lot of blood just sort of staining, and not only their own. You're gonna have goblin blood and stuff like that. Draconians.
Draconian blood green.
Sure.
Black.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. I like that. I was just trying to think of framing here. So we got the horse here. Here's the body, one body.
Yeah.
The saddle. And it's going to have like holes in it, and maybe it even still has a piece of a broken arrow out of the back or something. That's cool. Something we can indicate that, okay, this is how, one of the ways this guy died. I mean, they don't really describe it, the battle itself, just that it was a slaughter.
Yeah.
So I imagine this. Oh. So here's one apple, and this one maybe is just hanging off by a piece. The one shoulder pad's just kind of hanging there. Yeah. And this is the bloody stump with your blood. Yeah. There.
So I think it would be probably more interesting to see a blood-soaked, like a blood-stained saddle and like the blanket, rather than actively seeing any blood moving out. Because again, he did travel through cold climates, and battle was a while ago, so his heart's not pumping that blood anymore. So it'd be, clotted and stuff. But just seeing that gore, and maybe even you see like a piece of the bone of the spine or something, just something super disgusting, is great.
Okay. And then this one here, this would be Derek.
Hey, Michael, thanks for tuning in live. Yeah.
So there's Derek kind of He's hanging there. His arms maybe would even be bound just because he's not quite dead yet, because he's still alive.
Yep.
And just further humiliation that he would be, bound and brought back on the.
God, yeah, that'd be great, because like if he was bound from underneath, like his feet were bound underneath to his hands under the horse's belly.
Oh, that's good.
So he's like wrapped around.
I've never seen that. I don't know if I've ever seen that.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to do it. Who wants to be our guinea pig? You gotta get some shots.
Okay. There's Derek.
But just like, he's in this moment of delirium. Like he's not even fully consciously awake. He just like in and out of consciousness. Oh God. He deserves it though, this guy. I'm not a fan of Derek Krangard.
Yeah, he's a pretty. I mean, it's funny how he just goes crazy at the end.
Yeah,
like totally crazy. So,
hey,
roughly,
thanks for tuning in.
He's tied in there. There's the horse. Here's the horse's legs.
Yeah.
Right, and there's the saddle pommel, and then we see the other horse. Maybe it's not even. It couldn't be bothered. It's just I'm gonna nibble on the ground, and it's looking for. Something to eat. It could care less that it's got a dead guy on his back, right?
Yeah, it's a trained horse.
Yeah, it's a war horse. Yeah, whatever. So something like that. So we've got that, and then Bakaris is kind of right,
yep.
In the foreground. Maybe we can zoom this in.
I mean, it could be foreshortened too, so he's completely out of focus, and the only focus is on the closest corpse, with Derek in softer focus. So it's just this extreme foreshortened, almost like a Zack Snyder type shot.
Like something like this, right up there. Okay. And then, Derek's in the background.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for tuning in.
So then we got this guy. He's just goading on the knights.
Yeah.
Just goading.
You're not going to get me. You have your stinking code of honor.
Yeah.
I would be an easy kill. If you want to do it, I'm right here, but I know you're not going to. And then this is where we get it's not in the book, but there's got to be a moment where there's just side talk up on the battlement where they're just like, I can't believe this guy. Like, no, we can't do anything. We can't attack. He's bringing the corpses in. Derek might still be alive. And then, at one point, you just hear like that sound of a wooden arrow sliding out of the sheath, and then knocking and the bowstring cracking as she draws it back. And I want to get that shot that is that sort of over the shoulder from Lorana shot of her drawing the bow back. Now, I don't know what's more cinematic, seeing her pull back and aim down at Bakaris, or just seeing the arrow hit him as a surprise.
I think it's more cinematic to say. Okay, because he's sitting there being all cocky, and then all of a sudden, thump, arrow hits him. And then camera pans up, and there's Lorana standing defiantly on the battlements, like,
I'm not a knight.
Yeah, that might be a little more, because there's a point if I recall correctly, where it seemed like their morale wavered, like Bakaris was getting to them. Like he had kind of broken them, turned the tide in a way. And that's when Lorana's action reinvigorated the knights, right? Yep. So maybe we should show a little bit more dramatic tension, like a moment where the knights, they're crestfallen, they're unhappy, they're debating amongst each other. So now how would we show? Would we show so Bakaris he's talking to Sturm. Is Sturm, or do we want to see a shot of Sturm, like maybe a close up of him, kind of grimly debating, or like
almost have an inner monologue moment, just sort of like looking down and just sort of like not even looking at anything, just sort of staring down in the darkness. Because ultimately when Bakaris grabs, now I'm even saying it differently, when he grabs the corpse and he throws it down, he has to drop his torch, and then it gets dark. And that's at the point where Lorana actually hits him in the darkness. And so it's going to be like super dark and blue hues, and it's going to be kind of hard to see, but the light is going to be up there on the battlement. So if we get a shot right before that, just of Sturm, and maybe it's one of those shots where it's just away and below, and then it zooms in and sort of pans around Sturm, and we just get this sort of 180 view of Sturm as he's looking down, and we can just see him working out options in his head and the grimness of it.
Well, describe that to me. So, I mean, I'm just drawing a side view of him
Yeah.
kind of looking
Well,
down.
that's where the camera, I think, could end really well. Behind him, maybe you see another knight talking to someone else, or maybe you see Lorana behind him or something. But we just get this really tense look of him, and maybe he's just, they like to like twist their mustachios.
It's kind of what I've got him. He's he's got his. There's the mustache. Something's going on here. He's sort of figuring something out, and maybe there's another knight standing beside him, looking directly at Sturm.
Yeah,
He's
like, what are we
looking at
gonna
him,
do,
waiting to
boss?
see what he's going to say. What's going on, Sturm? Mike looking to his commander for some kind of signal.
Yeah, and in this moment, it's just, I don't even know if it needs any dialogue or anything. It's just we have to have that established shot of Sturm recognizing, I can't do anything. I can't hurt this asshole who just brought the corpse. I didn't like Derek Crownguard, but he is a fellow knight, and it's my duty to avenge him if possible. But I can't do it now. What are my options? I don't want to open the gate and let backers in. Like, we have to figure something out. He delivered terms of surrender. Like, I can't surrender to this. So if we just have that shot, and then you have the questioning look of the other knights by him, that will give us that inner tension of maybe they want him just to kill backers, just to get even, just to have that vengeance. But Sturm being the true knight that, the only true knight out there, basically, he's not going to let that happen. And yeah, I think it's nice to have that grim moment of him just sort of, maybe even he looks back over at his friends, his companions, not, not to ask them anything, but just to sort of look like, I can't do anything. Because Flint would be talking smack. Like, given the option, Flint and Tasselhoff too. If I can't remember if he was on the battlement or not, to be honest. But anyway,
yeah, they were standing beside him.
Yeah, they would
before it
definitely be
happened.
talking.
Flint was whittling, and I think was Tasselhoff sleeping, or was he? Yeah, I think he was sleeping because he was exhausted after the first initial wave of combat.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, so
I
it's
don't
thick
remember.
fog, and it wasn't actively snowing, but it is snow on the ground.
Okay.
But anyway, so yeah, we have this really great establishing shot providing curiosity and stuff. And then what I really like the idea is having that darkness shot of Baccharis where it's just immediate. The camera like cuts over to him. He's just dragged down a body, and then out of nowhere you just hit this, and then his body reacts before we even understand what that sound was. And then we we're on the shoulder view of him, right? Like the camera is on his shoulder. Then we see the arrowhead come through it as it's he's like, and screaming. And we follow the camera shot of where the arrow came from right up to Lorana. Still like with the bow in her hand looking down at him. And just zooms right up to her as fast as the arrow came down. And her just standing there.
So here's his arm, right? So he's kind of like reaching to his arm in pain, I'm thinking, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, what happened? And boom, there's the arrow. Like it just went in. Maybe it sunk in all the way too, or something, right?
Yeah, it's got to be bad.
It got like it incapacitates him. So, but she got him right in that chink in his armor because he's got those giant shoulder pads. If his armor is anything like Katara's, right?
Yeah.
So he got these giant shoulder pads, and he's like, what's going on? And his arm has now been incapacitated.
Yeah, and it's written here as, suddenly there was a twang of a bow, the thunk of an arrow striking into flesh, and the sound of startled swearing from below them. The knights turned around to stare in astonishment at a lone figure standing on the wall, a bow in its hand. I am not a knight, Lorana calls out, lowering her bow. I am Lorelantha Lassa, daughter of Quilinisty. We elves have our own code of honor, and I am sure you know I can see you quite well in the darkness. I could have killed you. As it is, I believe you will have some difficulty using that arm for a long time. In fact, you may never hold a sword again. And then Sturm, he's just smiling at her. Take that as our answer to your high lord. Just honk. And we have to have that really close-in shot of Lorana's face as she's delivering that line. Because it is, proud, I am a Quilinisty, I'm a princess, I am not a knight. Just
yeah,
revenge.
I could definitely see it like what's the word I'm looking for? It's definitely like a dramatic, like a worm's eye view shot. Like here we are. That's like Lorana right up front and center in the camera, right?
Yep.
Here she is. But the camera will have to maybe like, so we see a shot into the arm and then maybe some kind of either a cut or like a whip pan. And then we see like, I imagine something where it's a cut and then the camera follows and goes all the way up. So you see that, so it's a long shot, right? So there's, several frames here. And we see Bakaris, he gets shot here, right?
Yep.
So here's Bakaris, boom, he gets shot. And then the camera goes up, 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 up. And now we see Lorana up here on the tower with her bow, right?
Yep.
And then we zoom in.
Just continue zooming in.
To her face, right? So it's the same. It's like one long shot, but then there's a, I don't know, is that it's like a crane type shot, I guess, right? So we're going up, up, up.
You probably
and
do it
then,
with a drone nowadays, but.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So now we're seeing Lorana defiantly, like, shaking her fist at him or something, like I am Lorana.
As it's zooming, as that crane shot is coming in on her face, you see her just in that heroic pose with her hair blowing back through the fog. She drops the bow arm a little bit to deliver her monologue. Yeah.
Yeah, she's got to have the flowing hair. It's all about the flowing hair. And then she's got that big red banner on, or that red tassel on top of her helmet. Got to see her up here. So this is just a map of basically what we're seeing, but something like that. And okay, so that's sort of that shot. Now she's talking, and then there's the cut to Sturm. Now, like you said, he's looking at her. Does he turn over to her, and what is he doing?
I think. Yeah, I think he's following the look of the camera too. As the camera's going up, he's just turning his head over to her because it was a surprise to them as well. So he's like, he like quickly turns over to her, sees exactly what happened. As she starts speaking, he would never have done it. It's against his code, but he loves Lorana as a friend. He respects her as a leader. He just gets this warm smile and he looks back down defiantly. Give all answer to your high lord.
So maybe we show the other guys, like so Sturm and Flint and Tasselhoff all kind of looking this way towards Lorana.
Yeah.
Like, so she does the shot, there's a pan, it goes up to her. And then we see these guys' reactions like, what? What did you just do? What? There's some kind of, Tasselhoff's probably like waving his arms around or something. Like, what's going on?
Like tugging on like Flint's arm or something. Did you see that?
Yeah. Like pointing or something. And Flint's just, he doesn't know what to make of it. And Sturm, he's a little more grim. His hands on his hips or something like, I can't believe you just did that. Something like that, right? So we got Sturm and his, but they're all basically looking this way towards Lorana. Like, what's going on? Maybe, well, we want the reaction. So, but the problem is because of how short the, Tasselhoff and Flint are, if you want to have all of the characters' faces in the frame, we can't get too close to them, right?
Right. So
we'll have to something like that. It's more of more of establishing shot. So we're seeing what's going on there, and then is there from here? So we go boom. They see it. Lorana made her statement. They look to Lorana like, what's going on? Maybe she delivers another line and then Sturm turns, or do they just look at her? There's like a pause. Does she respond to them? Do you visualize like she just looks at them?
I think it's a very improv moment where they're looking to see if it was another knight who just went against his code and couldn't hold himself back anymore. They realize who it is, and shock, and then just like joy almost even crosses some of their faces. And I think it's a moment where she finishes her monologue, where they're looking at her sort of in awe and like just wonder. And then that's when Sturm looks down and just delivers his final line, and that would close out the scene in my mind.
Okay, so maybe we see Sturm over the shoulder, speaking down to Bakaris, who's down here.
Yeah.
Leaning out over the parapet, telling him to, take a hike, kind of thing. Like, go back to your master, and you got your answer. Something like that.
Yeah, I dig it.
Yeah. So then he's kind of something like this, and then the other knights kind of shaking their fists at him too, like.
I imagine some of them are probably like cheering.
Yeah. But in like
laughing,
kind of they have more dignity, right? So they're you know, they're shaking their fists, or they're, you know, banging their shields, or they're doing something knightly.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah, I
not
can see
quite,
that.
you know, they're not, because they're not the bad guys, they're the heroes.
Mhm.
So they're doing something to goad them on, but something within proper etiquette, I
Yeah.
guess. A
Yeah.
way to, you know, belittle an enemy without being dishonorable. Because honor's everything for these guys, right?
Yep.
So something, you know. So we see a couple heads here. We see the rest of the thing. We see the parapet, Sturm leaning against it, more aggressively, maybe, his, you know, take that. And then Bakaris standing here. He's probably, you know,
I mean, it's
maybe he's on his
dark
knees
at
in
this
pain,
moment.
right?
Oh yeah,
Like,
he's got to be
you know,
just
or what?
stunned that it even happened in the first place. It's like,
Yeah,
and now
yeah,
he's starting to question, oh shit, am I going to die here? Like, did
yeah,
I just
yeah.
make
Like,
a huge mistake?
would we see more of his reaction? Like, so after this, would we see like him looking up, kind of like, or spitting on the ground in disgust, or "I'll get you, guy"? Like, how would he react? How would we see
I think
that?
at this
Like,
moment, he's got to be terrified. You know, not defiant at all. I mean, he's got to get out of there before they allow her to kill him.
okay,
Because
so maybe we
if
see
she
him
could
running
hit
away.
him from way up there in the dark,
Hmm.
there's, you know, he's screwed. There's nothing he
Yeah.
could do except
So maybe
run.
he's running away now. We're
Yeah.
seeing him kind of, you know,
After the
he's running
second
away.
body slumps on the ground, he just jumps on the horse, rears it around.
Okay. I imagine him
Go
not
back to
even
the
getting
baby
on the
moment.
horse until after he's out of bowshot. Like, he's getting out of there so fast, right?
Oh, interesting. It's like a running mount.
Or maybe he just leaves the horses. So the horses are here. Like,
Gosh, I don't know.
he's
That's a
running
long
away
way
so
to.
fast. He doesn't care about the horse because he's going to die, because he's evil. He's a coward at heart
Yeah.
anyways, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the horses are back here, the gates here, the tower, you know, something like this, right?
Mhm.
And you can see all the knights up here, whatever. And then we see Bakaris. He's running away towards us,
Yeah.
maybe something a little more, you know, just to show his self-serving nature.
Yeah.
You know, running away, scared, something like that. Like, he's coming at us towards the viewer.
Yeah.
You know, and then would he be looking over his shoulder, or would he be just looking away in terror, like,
I think he would be glancing back from time to time as he's running for sure,
yeah,
just to make
looking
sure.
back over his shoulder because he's afraid someone's gonna shoot him.
Yeah. Because at this point, the knights are probably going down to collect the bodies, and so you're going to hear that gate chain rattling as it opens, or
Oh,
whatever
okay.
wheel or whatever opens it, and so
Mhm.
that's going to even terrifying them more. Because what are they going to ride after me?
Mhm.
It's like, I got to get out of here, and I don't even want to stay on this shot long. We just need to
Mhm.
get that establishment of he is not this super powerful person standing in defiance against Lorana. He is about to be killed, and he needs to get out of Dodge.
Mhm. Yeah, with the arrow still stuck in his arm.
Yeah. And so he's got to be nursing that arm, like
Yeah,
holding onto it.
he's got the one arm kind of dead now, and then he's got his other. He's holding his arm or gripping the wound, and there's this arrow sticking out of him here,
Yeah.
and he's running away. Can't get out, like a bat out of hell. He's just trying to get out of there
That's
as
right.
fast as he can.
Yeah.
Maybe the next shot would be the gates opening.
Yeah.
Like a little more. It's more solemn. Well, if you were to continue,
Right.
right? Like, so if we were going to do the next stage of the story, they gotta, maybe there'd be something dramatic about that, or do we even need to see that? Would we just show them dragging Derek in?
Yeah, that's interesting. Because the strength of the next is realizing that Derek is alive, but
Mhm.
mad, like completely out of his mind. And
Mm.
so maybe, maybe it just cuts to, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours later or whatever.
Well, maybe that would be a different scene.
Yeah, for sure.
So, because we've got quite a bit, let's recap here. I know you only had an hour, so we don't
Yeah.
want to take up too much more of your time. But I think we got some good bones here. We've got Bakaris approaching,
Mhm.
and starting off, there's like a distance shot of him in the distance. Just
Yep.
I almost imagine if you framed it, like, sorry, that this would be, we wouldn't even see Sturm in them at first, right? We would just
Mhm.
see it'd be black, and then this character would come into focus, and then as the camera panned out, then we would see him in relation to
Yeah.
the thing, right? So there'd be a combination of him moving within frame and the camera panning out, and then we have reverse, where he's approaching the gates, And then here now he's talking to, delivering his insults.
Yeah.
And then here, this is, you remember,
Yeah.
we can see the corpses up close now from behind. He's talking, we want to, I think that so what I'm going to do to anyone watching is I'm going to go back and redraw these and make them look better, right? And we're going to put a little bit of light into them, and we'll try to show, I really want to the only light source really is going to be these torches, I think.
Yeah.
And we'll see, because that'll really help play. I mean, if you go back to this one, and if this is the only light source, this torch here, this is going to be dark. Everything around, it's going to be black. There's just going to be cast lighting on everything. And then the injuries in the blood will really pop, right? Like the moisture, and then we'll have snow falling too. So it'll have that, Game of Thrones kind of evil, the others kind of vibe maybe, right?
Awesome. Yeah.
And then here we cut to, Sturm contemplating, his guys looking to him for guidance. And then here is the longer, I've kind of made a mess with my layer stack here, but do you ever have that when you mess around with Photoshop, your layer stack just gets out of control?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Alba, yes, this is just a storyboard that we're sort of concepting at this moment.
So we've got the shot of Baracus getting hit, and then we're going to... what's going on? We'll make it more, and then we're going to do this longer shot where, starts with the shot in the arm, and we're going to, crane upwards towards the hero shot, Lorana, and it'll pause on her for a beat. I think just her standing there, the cape and the hair flowing in the wind, just that epic, cheesy,
absolutely
80s shot that we would always see. Maybe there'll be a flash of lightning. Who knows, right?
That'd be great. Cool. Yeah.
And, we got the wind blowing in the snow. Maybe there'll be a heroic gust of wind, something to really just dun, dun, dun.
It pans with Ked Tasselhoff holding a fan.
Yeah, sure. Why not? And then, it'll zoom into Lorana. She'll deliver her line. And then we see the reaction of, the other heroes of the Lance, like, Lorana, I guess Gilthanas is, well, in the book, Gilthanas isn't there, but in the module, he's there. But let's go with the book. So it's just these three. And then we'll end with, Sturm and the other knights saying, take a hike. We don't need you guys.
Jack.
And then we just have the last frame, the last shot with Bakaris running away in terror with an arrow sticking out of his arm. Maybe, I don't know, I'm going to play with his pose. Maybe he's sort of like hunched over, not, with his back up. Like, I'll think of something, but this is the idea of, so yeah. Are you good with it?
I think it's great.
Yeah. Cool.
Yes, 100%. Thanks, man. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, this has been great. Now, how do I get my camera back here? Stop sharing. There we go.
Whoa. Camera just zoomed in. Let me
Oh, it's because my camera's attached to my Cintiq. So
gotcha.
Yeah, so now here we go.
I gotcha.
So yeah, I'll take that and I'll rework it and do some have some fun with it and polish it up, and then we can revisit next time.
That'd be dope. That'd be awesome. Next week, just for everyone watching, so I'm not going to have one. I'm going to be in Mexico, hopefully having a good time and not getting kidnapped by cartel. So, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
You never know. So this is going to be it for the next 2 weeks. Mike, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and just riffing and showcasing your talents and just storyboarding these ideas with us. I really appreciate it.
It's been a lot of fun. I love it. I could do this stuff every weekend. It's I have not quite as much of a passion for Dragonlance as you, but just a little bit less. But I can talk Dragonlance all the time, and it's really a lot of fun to storyboard these scenes and bring them to life and talk about them from an more in-depth perspective. As a real fan, I mean, I talk about these things, I think about these things. It's nice to work with other fans and talk about it and visualize it, and maybe we can come up with something that looks kind of neat.
It'd be very cool. You just have to hand it off to Maganello so he can make it.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what we should do. We should find some way to get in touch with him and say, hey, we've got great ideas. Is he actually going to make that, or is that just a rumor?
He said he's developing it. Not every development goes through, so who knows? He's been working on it since 2017 as a film, and that fell through. So who knows? But I think, I mean, I can reach out to him and see if he's interested in coming on and just sort of riffing a little bit about what he thinks. I don't know that he would ever come on a tiny little podcast like this, but who knows?
You never know.
Yeah.
You know, might as well reach out and ask them.
Yeah.
And yeah, that'd be great. That'd be really cool. I would like to see Dragonlance brought to the screen, but done right. I don't want it to be done. I mean, I'm one of those fans. I'm really passionate about the IP, and I want it to be done respectfully. I don't want someone to bring in the IP and be like, okay, well, we're gonna change it so dramatically that you don't recognize it.
Right.
You know?
That's my fear, is that like if you read the novels, you realize how gritty it is. Like this is a grim, war-torn, dystopian type world where, you know, we were just talking about how the beheaded corpse is going to look like. Stuff like that was real. You know, those battle scenes, if it's not like Braveheart blood, then what's the point? You know, I mean, you have to have that gritty realism. And so if they try to PG-13 it up, it's just not going to do it justice. You know, people are going to think it's a cutesy fantasy setting, when in my mind, I see Dragonlance closer to like Conan than, you know, what we got with the cartoon, where it's all sort of cutesied up. You know,
well,
I don't
that's
mind
where it
humor
came
and
from.
stuff, of course, but
Well, Tasselhoff and Flint, they'll provide the humor, right? They'll throw those moments in. But yeah, you're right. If you look at the 80s stuff that was going on at the time, like Conan, Red Sonja, you know, Beastmaster, all of those types of movies, right? They had that grittiness. They still have that little bit of that campiness going on, but it's dark and dirty, and like, I think we could do it better if we took what we've learned from Game of Thrones and then apply it to I almost said Forgotten Realms, apply it to Dragonlance. And make it gritty. It's got to be gritty, because whenever they do high fantasy, they might try to go Lord of the Rings, lots of color and that kind of thing. And Dragonlance, it's dark, and even the story, you know, Rassilon and Fist and Antlus, like that's a dark story, and that's a really cool narrative that goes throughout, you know, several novels, and you know, selling your soul, and it doesn't really come in, you know, it doesn't even come into fruition until the end of the books. But all of these different plot threads could really add some incredible depth, you know, but it takes someone who grasps it. And it sounds like Joe Manganiello understands Dragonlance and respects that. So hopefully it's in good hands. But whenever you get, you know, the executive types, the Hollywood types, they're the ones that are going to, well, we need to make sure this demographic's covered, and, you know, how are we going to sell action figures if the character dies too soon, you know? So we have to not let that happen.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting. I'll reach out and we'll see. And then maybe we can just have a conversation with him and stuff. It'd be cool.
Sure. Well, I'll send you the when I finish these drawings, I'll let you know.
Oh, awesome. And so everyone watching this, you know, Mike will come back on and we'll showcase his work once he's in a place where he wants to show it, and we'll just sort of keep sharing our passion of Dragonlance with y'all. Thank you all so much for tuning in and enjoying watching Mike do his thing. I love watching other artists. I think it's fantastic. That is going to do it for this hangout today. Let us know what you thought of the storyboarding. Did we miss some core elements that you thought would be great in a cinematic film scene like we were trying to depict? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, I'd like to remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Click the button, the bell, to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the stupid like button. All this goes to help other Dragonlance fans like you find this channel and enjoy it. So let's do that, shall we? All right, until next time, Slàinte mhath, everyone.